Welcome back, viewers, to the Madhouse. This is Madness to the Method. This is my honest review of the Praktica MTL 5, which is this. The Praktica MTL 5. This is the first camera that I've ever owned and ever used, and it is, despite some of its flaws, the beginning of my lifelong of all things photography. More on that for a moment. But first, about the camera. Praktica MTL 5 was the 35mm SLR made in the glorious East German Democratic Republic by VEB Pentagon between 1983 and 85. There's about 500,000 examples in existence, and they were made before being replaced, and by being replaced I mean slightly upgraded and rebadged as the MTL5B. This is a simple, fully mechanical 35mm SLR with no frills whatsoever. Operation is simple and straightforward, and no, you filthy running dog capitalist, there is no autofocus or decadent program modes anywhere to be seen. Nothing to get in the way of your pure socialist photographing experience. Just focus, set the aperture, and shoot and wind on to the next frame, as you do. For the aspiring revolutionary photographer on a budget who wants to seize the means of production and learn the basics of photography, the MTL5 would seem at first glance to be the obvious choice. Now, the Praktica MTL5 uses the M42 universal thread mount, which was first introduced in 1949 with the Zeiss Contact S, which in itself was made in the former glorious German Democratic Republic. Besides Praktica, a number of other camera manufacturers also adopted the M42 thread mount for their SLR cameras, the most notable being the Asahi Optical Co., who produced the Pentax. However, by the early 1980s, the M42 thread mount was showing its age, and when the MTL5 actually came to market, almost all of the other manufacturers who had adopted the universal thread mount, as it was called, had eventually abandoned it, except for a few Eastern Bloc holdouts like Zenit, and they replaced it with a more precise and efficient bayonet mount, usually the Pentax K mount. Now the Praktica MTL5 features stop-down TTL exposure metering, which is activated by this lever here. Now, TTL exposure metering means that the lens aperture remains fully open to compose and focus the image, and then you stop down lever to actually stop down the lens to its shooting preset and measure the exposure and set the shutter speed accordingly. Shutter speed being this dial here. Being set by this dial here. Where were we? The metering system is the average metering system, which means it takes measurement of the light evenly across the frame, not the center weighted pattern that we saw later. And of course is operated by this little black lever here, just next to the shutter release, which is down here. Now the electricity meter, God, I'm not filling this again, damn it. The metering system in this, which is a match needle metering system, is the only thing in the camera that requires batteries and electrical power, which is the button cell here, under this cover here, which I'm not taking off because I'm too lazy. But just trust me, it's there. It's a mercury button battery cell. You can't get the mercury ones, but you can get the I don't know. You can get things that work, assuming that you can find one that works. The shutter release is placed unusually, as I've shown you before, in front of the camera instead of on the top deck, which is usually what you get with other cameras. This can take some getting used to. The vertical travelling metal focal plane shutter, which is here, runs from 1 to 1,000th of a second plus bulb, and the self-timer operates on the delay of about 7 seconds. Now, unfortunately, the flash sync speed is only about 1/30th of the second, which is shown here on this dial, with a little bulb on the next to the 30, which is fairly slow, but hell, I suppose it works after a sort of pattern. Now the lens on this camera is the excellent Carl Zeiss Tessar 2.8 50mm I've used this lens on a number of other cameras. It is absolutely superb and wonderful, assuming you can find a one that works mechanically. This one sadly doesn't. It doesn't focus. The helicoils are broken, but it's good enough for the purpose of this review. But the optical elements are still beautiful. The lens still stops down. It stops down. And I suppose if I had a adapter to use on mirrorless cameras, I would do so, but I don't at the moment. Too bad. Now, as I said, this is the first camera I've ever owned. I've had it for more than 25 years. I took this to university and used it in my photography elective course, at least at first. This is the first of 3 Prakticas that I've owned and used. So believe me, I am more than qualified to tell you this Praktica MTL5 is a screaming pile of dog shit. Don't get me wrong, I wanted to like this camera. I really, really wanted to like this camera. For the sake of my mother who gave this camera to me. Which is why I bought 2 more of them to try. All of them have failed me. All of them! The primary issue being with the Praktica SLRs is the reliability of the shutter, or rather the complete and utter lack thereof. If you like playing Russian roulette with your shutter speeds, good for you, comrade. But I'm fairly confident in saying that us bourgeoisie capitalist pigs prefer our expensive film stock to be exposed correctly and consistently. And speaking of exposure, the shutter speed... I'm not spelling this again, damn it. The shutter blades also have a rather unfortunate tendency to leak light, which has ruined many of my exposures and just adds that one little extra drop of misery. And as you can see, this one doesn't work at all. That's broken, it doesn't work. It basically renders this camera as a paperweight. So do I recommend the Praktica of any sort? Well, in a word, no, I don't. If you want or need a fully mechanical, manual 35mm SLR to learn the fundamentals of photography, there are far better choices to be had. Thanks in no small part to the capitalist free market system of the West. For example, if your little heart is absolutely set on the bare bones M42 thread mount camera, then I recommend this. The Pentax Spotmatic. This, boys and girls, is similarly specified to the Praktica, even though it is older, and unless abused, they are far more reliable and generally can be found in something approaching working condition. In fact, the light meter on this one actually works and is accurate. Alternatively, if you're willing to forego the thread mount, there's also the Pentax K1000, which is basically exactly the same camera, but in a Pentax K bayonet mount. And even then, the K1000 can be adapted to take screw mount lenses. Isn't that great, boys and girls? Alternately, and one camera that I really like, is the Nikon FM. An excellent camera in and of itself, similarly specified, far more reliable, far more refined, the metering is more accurate. In fact, there's nothing not to like about a Nikon FM. But that's the subject of another review. As will be the Pentax. There we go. So this is my review of the Praktica MTL5. In so many ways, the Praktica MTL5 is the embodiment of the communist regime that produced it. So much promise, so much hope, and yet so much disappointment and failure. So that is my review. I said it was going to be honest. This has been Madness to the Method. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and leave a comment. And by the way, if you do shoot Praktica cameras and you have one that works and you had a positive experience, please let me know in the comment section. I would appreciate that. Thank you.